And hello again. This is the Out of the Mud universe, and we are connected and protected with Dehru Mitchell. Today's title is Black History is Infinite and Not Confined to a Month. So, no further ado, here's your host, Dehru Mitchell.
Well, I'll say good evening, good evening, good evening. Thank you. I want to start by clarifying that black by no means is a people or a race. I'm speaking basically of all melanated people who have lived before times and are presently today making history by the things they just did yesterday. So I'm going to start with this part and say a point of focus is self-determined determination. This is a state of mind that has its foundation in all of the greatness of melanated people from the ancient times till today. There's one common denominator or one true factor that remains constant no matter whether the rulership came from the main fact the, no matter where the rulership came from, the main factor is that whoever did the most for the most people, their people, was always the most revered. I shall start, revered, yes, thank you. I shall start with the most eye and mind opening and mind expanding, espousing of facts that was never given. And I found them to be said, taught, shared by Dr. Irvin Van Sertima, Sheikh Anta Diop, a few others, and they had a thing called the Nile Valley Conference. I wasn't aware of this at a time when it actually occurred because of my, I'll just say, being buried so deep under the mud. But now I'm coming out of the mud, so here you go. Uh, his explanations of history, and it began in ancient times. And I mean, by ancient, I mean times before calendars and dates were given, where melanated people made accomplishments or did things that were never spoken of by those who spoke of themselves in place of those people who did those things because they wanted credit for them. They wanted us not to even be in existence, as far as that's concerned, as people who had abilities above and beyond theirs. And by that, I could say Europeans on over to all of the groups that came before Europeans, including the Moors, even though they would get credit in Europe or have been credited by Europe for beginning civilization there twice. Not stated by Europeans, of course, but known by all of those outside of Europe to have done so. Now, and the fact of just say all of the studies from Egyptology, the earliest writings, and so on and so forth, they were all from melanated people. They were from melanated people from the beginning. I've even come across recently a renewing of the ideals, such as I'm going to go ahead and say Mama T just did a thing that couple of days ago on what was it? Let me see. I wrote it down. Uh, Tiamat, or whatever it was. It was about Tiamat. It was on somebody else's podcast, and she put it on her official YouTube channel. So I was just saying that to go back to the fact that in the sense she's using AI, and there was a facilitation of AI one that gave her the ability to ask questions, and AI gave her the chronological drift or the chronological stages of how things occurred from things being of a gaseous or spiritual nature all the way down to the physicalities that came in. And it was quite something in the way that it espoused it or spoke of it or gave that information out. And I would go and it struck me as I was listening to it that I had heard aspects of it before. And then I went, oh, okay. It blink, it turned the light on, you know, which is actually what they call being illuminated, which is becoming knowledgeable, which is what some people call the light bearer or Satan or Lucifer, whatever you want to call him, the light bearer. All of this stuff it revolves around in circles and circles and circles, but yet and still they don't want to give credit where credit is due. And on this planet, which originally, in my understanding of Tiamat, was the name of the planet. On this planet was nothing at one time but melanated beings once it fell and descended into materialism or matter that could be visualized, touched, felt, all the five senses involved, and so on and so forth. But then there were other aspects that, if you go to the ancient times, were being utilized because the planet was fresh, it was full, it had energies that dissipated during over periods of time, and you know during the times when it was present, magnanimous things were being done. As I mean, it was people moving those 100 tons blocks of you know stone, cut stone, by mere thinking about it. They were just telling it to, you go over there and you sit down there and you do this and you do that, and those stones were obeying it because of the energies involved. Basically, they were nothing but energy. You go back to the fact that what we fell from was frequency and vibration and descended into this material plane, onto this material plane in material form, which is called bodies. And wow, I had a little explanation to that somewhere. Let's see. Yeah, I had a little explanation to that somewhere. And it's quite extensive. So that it's so extensive that if one were to begin at the beginning or begin anywhere, you can get 1/100th of the information of people who did something in a month's time. That is simply crazy. When they build their whole history and they don't interrupt it, they don't break it, they consistently add to it year by year, century by century, eons of time by eons of time. They go back to the point where, you know, the white people who got it, or the Europeans, excuse me, those Europeans who got that information from Greece, from the Greco, from Greece, from Rome, all of these people, just like Christ, went to Egypt and got the knowledge. They went to, I get a little exuberant here, but so excuse me. A little excited, a little, oh man, I want everybody to know what I know. Not that I'm a real aficionado on it, but learning from those that are aficionados, what can I say? That's who I that's whom I chose to know was giving truth. And how did I know? Because they told me in very certain terms that so much was not being shared because it would belittle those whom claimed and inserted themselves in history. Now they claimed that it was their knowledge. Well, they got it from they didn't want to say. They even um, uh, uh, well, the word is debunked now, but they even wanted to say that Herodotus and all of those other philosophers and technicians and scientists and so on and so forth were mistaken when they gave credit to the ancient Egyptians for having shared that knowledge with them. Isn't that something? Shangat Diop and Dr. Ivan Van Sertiman had no problem with going back, doing the research. Oh, and by the way, Sheikh Anta Diop, man, the top scientist on the planet at the time. He did the carbon dating. He did the dating of materials in Egypt that gave them the propensity to say they discovered something and they utilized it. And we had no input or actual involvement in. That's the word. Yeah. Man, this guy went back and by reaching the epitome of that level of knowledge, he had his own laboratory. And as I said, he did carbon dating. I don't know if most people carbon dating is taking the material and saying when it was and what its properties are, what it could become, what it was at the time, and what it will be in today's time. He went so far as to taking the wrappings off of mummies. Well, and finding that these people were so perfectly preserved that just a little reanimation, that is what is the word when you dry out but you put water back in there, just putting water back on or rehydrating. Yes, the word rehydrating this tissue made it so much alive again that they could uh, graft it onto material that was thousands of years old, could graft it onto a new person. I'm not going to say a baby, but a new person or a modern day person, and it would function as though it was part of their natural body. I was astounded, amazed, very blown away that no one, I didn't know. I don't know how many people did know, but that kind of genius existed in melanated people and was kept from us. Dr. Ivan Van Sertima went through so much. And of course, he did the same conflicts that I would say, what's his name? James Baldwin did when he went and he had that debate with somebody and he proved that America's was built off the backs of the melanated people on this side of the water in America, that is. And he won the debate. And it was such a stupendous thing that he received a standing ovation for so long that they had to make people sit down and shut up over someone who was veritably considered such so astute as he couldn't lose. And just like I've said, he said that We went to get, oh, this is, yeah. We went to get the splinters of the materials that made the nose and the lips of the Sphinx from the museum that had it. And, the person that was over the museum, the curator, whatever, said, "Oh no, Dr. Van Sertima." This is how he spoke. "Oh no, Dr. Van Sertima, we can't give you these items. If we did that, we would empty out all of the museums in Europe, and we would not have anything to draw anybody in to see." Dr. Van Sertima said, "No, I only want one thing. The splinters to the nose of the Sphinx and the lips so that we can put it back on there so it would be irrefutable that these were Negroid." Oh, no, 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 no. That, but he got it. And then when he got it, guess who was in charge? Arabs. You know what Arab said? "Oh, no. We can't put that nose and those lips back on those monuments." That's what they were. So that it would destroy our tourist trade. What? It would destroy their tourist trade. For that's who was in charge of all those things at the time. But look where it came down from and look what it ended up as. Okay. Now, this is why I'm saying that history, none of that stuff can be confined to a month in learning and even beginning to mention it to our youth who have no knowledge of anything that occurred in history because it's all been swiped. You think we got a mind wipe or mind swipe when we came to birth? No, we got a mind swipe so much so that it was never able to be taught and learned after we came into birth. And you can go all the way back to how that birth became admiralty law. That when you came out of your mom, you saw the doc, and the mom gave birth, and all that jibber jabber stuff that they claim could give you, if you figured it all out, sovereignty of self. Only that's all. That's all you get. Sovereignty of self. And in Egypt, it was the same thing way back then. Man, know thyself. Yeah, over any doorpost to any system or lodge of learning. And I did say lodge of learning. You understand? Which is where all those mystery systems came from, which is where all of those secret societies came from, all that stuff, all the way down the line. But I guess what? If you don't get the history, you cannot follow the chronology of those things. You cannot follow how they developed and became what they are. And then, as is, we don't know what they are today until we go back and do extensive research. We got to go around blockades. We got to go around dead ends. We got to, that those dead ends aren't actually dead ends. They're just put there. That's the illusion that we have to deal with on a daily basis because they tell you, oh, there's nothing else there. You know, I even saw that little short where Richard Pryor and this little group of explorers, he was the lead in it, and they got to this pyramid and they opened the doorway, which he found, and he opened the doorway and they went in and he went to looking at books and manuscripts and stuff like that, and he said, "Hey, what? Man, all these people are black." Excuse me. All these are black people. And, you know, um, well, the end of it was that the whole group of, well, what would you call them? Anthropologists and archaeologists and so on and so forth that was there snuck back out and said, "Oh, we can't let this, there's nothing here. We can't let the world know this." So they closed the door, locked him in, Richard Pryor, that is. You know what I mean? He's in there. Hey, let me up out of here. I got to bring all this stuff to the world. Oh, no, you won't, buddy. And that was that. So, I mean, you know, as I said, Dr. Van Soderman really opened my eyes. He went through quite a bit. At one time, he almost died through. I guess I don't know, sheer exhaustion, sheer mental frustration, any of those things. Like Dr. Amos Wilson, he died of a broken heart because after all of his concerted efforts, people just weren't getting it. You know, they were getting it, but they couldn't get past the fact that he was one of few who was given ideals that, look, why are you letting somebody else dictate to you what you should be according to what you are, according to what you're not? You know, come up with the miseducation of black youth and the miseducation of the Negro and all of these other little, or all of these other suggestions. You understand? That wasn't thoroughly looked into by the melanated people who that information was for. If you were miseducated, who miseducated you? Why were you miseducated? And then what could you do to get the right education or education or knowledge of self? Come on. It's simple. It's so simple as to, who do you take to be an authority on you? You know, who do you take or what do you take as an authority of you? Do you go by politics, religion, economics? What do you define yourself by? And then you go back and look all through history and see what each category and those who reached the pinnacle of that category in that group did, who they were, how they managed. I ain't gonna say ruled. I'm gonna say managed to have themselves as rulership, as controllers, as those people who made history, who made whole masses of people fall into an order that fall into an order that allowed them to a continuous existence on the levels that they were on, and so on and so forth.
So we have Tommy Boy here. He says, so knowing about secret societies of the past, how does it apply today? Excuse me. How does it apply today? I actually remember his show, and they cut it short. You're right on Richard Pryor's show. Great point. After we discover history over his story, what do you advise moving forward, sir?
Well, as usual, I advise the thing that they say will never happen: forming united or forming groups with singular ideals, just like just like a body. You understand? You have members. You have this part here, being the head, being that facilitator of all of the things that the rest of the body has to do to reach a goal. Now, the body, you understand, doesn't move as fast as the mind or the brain or the thoughts, okay? But the body works in unison with the brain. And that unity is what's necessary. I don't care if you got a right hand, a left hand, which what some call in politics, they call it right wing, left wing. The body itself is on the same, they're both attached to the same body. Okay. You got organs within the body, which you could consider organizations. Okay. But now, if all of these supposedly organizations, which we all know were infiltrated and scattered out and broke down, and now they're manipulated and controlled by those sources that claim not to be a part of them. But if nevertheless, I mean, do like Ibrahim Torre is doing, kick them out. The majority of them are the people who really want to accomplish something. Those infiltrators, those annihilators, and those conspirators are the ones that came in, like FBI, CIA, or any of those intelligence groups who are supposed to be more intelligent than the people who actually organize the organizations. So much so that they could control them by putting certain people in key spots to make sure that the whole faction never really came together in unity because they told one person, okay, this person wants more glory than you. And they made that glory seem important, but the glory was never important. The whole importance of it is what does the most good for the most people. So we go back to the point where you ask unity and conforming the whole of the melanated people to raise back up in their own stature, superpowers, those states of mind that says, I am and there will be none else. You understand? That shall overtake me and deride me of my personal, and by personal, I mean the whole group, ability to rule themselves, do what's best for them as a whole. And by as a whole, I mean all over the planet. Don't you know we're all over the planet? So it's like I was saying, as Ibrahim Torre and the groups in Africa are now kicking out those foreigners. Friend, I mean, it's bewildering to me
What
that
what
Portuguese.
Tommy Boy said, to your point, to what you were saying. I will follow you from this point. We On this point on, we definitely think alike. You definitely possess the knowledge, my brother.
Well, thank you, Tommy. Now, it's not that I possess so much of it, but I've researched enough of it to know that it has its beginnings in our people, and it's always been of our people. And the breaking of that, the spell. I mean, it's been done in so many ways. I had, excuse me for bringing. Hopefully, she won't be offended by it if she ever finds out, because I don't think she's looking at me anymore. But I had a woman who was so caught up in being bewitched that it stunted her whole life and her ability to be involved in relationships and so on and so forth. And she never really got down to the fact that it was something that was contrived, even though it was naturally an ability of ours in frequency and vibrations to have all of these things, such as mental telepathy, which is telepathy with empathy, to be able to feel someone else so greatly that it affected us. And because we didn't know what was going on, it made us crazy. I walk past somebody and they're going through a great deal of sorrow or pain or something like that. And I don't know it, but it jumps on me. And I'm not even acquainted with that person. I can't reach out a helping hand because they're so far distant from me, or I'm so distant from them and we're right next to each other. But I got my mind on something that says, hey, if I don't follow my course and I stop to, you know, find out where these feelings, like Christ was touched well, I'm going to use this for an example. Like Christ was touched in that crowd, and all of the people were thronged around him, but he felt something because he asked, who is it that touched me? And that woman that touched him had had an issue of blood for I don't know how her whole life, I guess, or her whole point of from her point of maturity, where she had menstrual cycle. But she had an issue of blood, and at that point where she just touched the hem of his garment, she was made whole. And Christ turned around. He said, "Who touched me?" She cowered, of course, but she said she admitted to it. And he said, "I know someone touched me, for I felt virtue out of me." Now, if we have that ability to share that amongst each other, based on hers was faith. She said, I know if I can but touch the hem of his garment, I would be made whole. But now we also knew that to be our ability to pass this type of healing amongst each other. If we weren't subjected to psychological warfare, I mean, I'm going to leave that right there for the moment, but just to say to psychological warfare that disunited us also, because we would know we had those abilities to pass and share with each other.
Okay, we have Tommy Boy asking, why do you think we as a race keep falling for the same con game
Banana in the
of
tailpipe.
getting us to go against each other in a New York minute?
Wow. Well,
Jim Crow recipe and Willie Lynch.
you got it right there. That's your answer. It's programming. It's indoctrination. It's those things that they use that were naturally ours, but they turned them, inverted them, switched them around, and put themselves on the label and said it was theirs that we could never get because it was never ours. But then they used it, and the word they use these days is weaponized. They weaponized it against us. They took our natural abilities and weaponized them against us by saying they were theirs. We never owned them, but we do, in contrast to those things, that the very shock, I'm going to put this down like this, the shock waves that broke into our natural frequencies and vibrations by those coming from the outside. And this was in this was in the formation of the video done by Mama T and, on Tiamat. Okay, so let's go back to, let's just dive in right there for a second. Tiamat, before it became planet Earth, okay, an ethereal, spectral entity called Ma, Tiamat, the Ma, the mother. Okay, so we're back. Yeah, back at the point of speaking of Tiamat, had a little slight technical difficulty, and this is what happens. You know, you get where we began as vibrations, frequencies, and so on and so forth, and then we had outside. I don't know. See, I grew up in a time when, as I was recalling things, my earliest studies was in Egyptology and the study of the ancients being entities and the entities being elements and the elements forming all that or everything coming out of the elements, which is called elemental these days, coming out of those elements, like what Tiamat was, excuse me, before it became matter, was crystalline waters of production, reproduction, and production. It was parthenogeneous, parthenogeneous, and it reproduced itself. Okay. It birthed all of the planets, all of the universes, all of the constellations, so on and so forth, all the way down to one planet becoming material and falling in frequencies and vibrations and causing matter to become solid. Okay, for that point, we got to outsiders. Okay. Now, as I was going to say, for me, that was learned as the waters of noon or waters of noon, NUM, which goes back into Egyptology, the earliest studies of Egyptology. And it was where all of those factors took place. Okay. But it was explained in a different manner than it is today. So we'll leave that there because, at one point in time, I consider myself an ancient of days because I've been here a little while. And I'm not claiming to be such an extended elder as to take any of the credit from the elders that were before me. And somebody that's still alive today who's done much more intensive study than I have, read many more books. Understand? But still, nonetheless, when it comes down to all of the knowledge that is obtainable, it's all in you. You understand? And the fact that you've been told that you're nothing keeps you broken from looking inside yourself, keeps you breaking every, you break every boundary and barricade and glass ceiling or uh, anything once you get into the exploration of self to the degree that you know the same that's within is without, the same above throughout below. All of this, all of this, all of it is in synchronization, it's in syntax, it's in the method of study, it's in the method of knowing. Nobody knows you better than yourself. Even though at this point in time, you may not know yourself that well. But I mean, you take the anatomy, you take the study of anatomy, physiology, the mind, the body, the muscles, the veins, all of those things that are so intricate as to form the body. Take the same thing in the solar system, in the planetary structures that cause themselves to be everything from the elements that are discarded, such as the Milky Way, that's still floating around, still deriving from itself, still deriving by systems of star systems, of solar systems, of galaxies, and everything else. They still are receiving materials from that. Even if they're like little bitty parts that fly off and become meteors and they crash into planets, look at what that planet just got. And what is the planet going to do with it? It's going to become part of its ecology, no matter what it forms. It may bring new life forms. It may kill life forms. You got things like they had as planet destroyers, meteors, and so on and so forth. But that's you get to all of that, but then you also get to the point. you also get to the fact that as a people on this planet, a branch of these people, call them a tribe, knew these things so intricately that science, as yet, sending all of those materials up in space to take pictures and graph things, have not yet figured out how these supposedly primitive people knew these things. And I dare to say they weren't primitive, they were highly advanced. They could see things with their normal eyesight that it would take other people telescopes. Understand? And then with telescopes, they could see what was not possible to be seen by those other people with the same telescope, just going by the ratio of what they saw naturally with their eyes compared to those things that they saw with telescopes. And you got some telescopes, man, that almost reach off the planet as far as their physical structure is concerned. Okay. But then they have their extensions, which are called satellites and so on and so forth. So we get to all of this. And then we say, what part do we play in it? Let me tell you. Let me tell you what was making history. Who are the women that they're planning to send up into space now? Black women. Okay. Black women had, and I'll state it again, they had the space programs. We don't know that. We don't know that whole. We don't know that wholeheartedly. We don't know that throughout the population of the planet. We don't know that there are melanated women, melanated men who have the highest levels of technology and science and so on and so forth. They don't teach us that because don't want us to proceed to want to reach those levels, which we have the ability to do if we're not stunted and stifled by being told we have been nothing all of this time. Knowing in and of ourselves that whatever we put our mind to, we do. Good, bad, ugly, or indifferently. And we do it according to what we have to do, even if some of those things accordingly we're not allowed to do. And I'll have to say, if you look at some of Dr. Evan Van Sertima's works, and any of them, they state on camera or in their lectures or whatever, I'm not allowed to say this at this time. I'm not allowed to give you this information at this time. I know a little bit more, but I can't say this. What? You mean to tell me at the level you're at in academia, in in being the most knowledgeable in a category that, oh, what can I say? They're supposed to be so knowledgeable in that they won't allow you to say something because it tears down everything that they consider they built based on the fact that you had no part in it. And to the most part, I would rest my case on that and get back to, okay, you know, uh, listen, I'll put it like this. To be certain, okay, Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, Dr. Uh, uh, um, I just say most of the doctors who have their doctors, their PhDs, their professorships, and they've been tenured and they've taught at major colleges all over the world, except for in America. Okay, they get to teaching in America, they can't teach. They have their curriculums confined to what's allowable or not allowable. Okay, they couldn't even. They It's just now coming to the forefront that all slaves were not from Africa. That most people weren't even slaves. Come on, they were just people who were inhibited in every aspect of gaining what was considered the American dream, the um, propensity to be progressive and to do for self. They made they made the whole of the indigenous people basically dependent, not independent, like they were being independent of Europe on this land, but making us dependent on making them independent from Europe. Let me restate that again. They built this country on us by saying we weren't ever here to build the country, but we were the ones who built the country. They, being here from somewhere else, had to become independent of where they came from to own the country by taking it from us. I'm through for that. I'm through with that for now. Because as I said, this is Black history. True, melanated people history. You understand? We're melanated from the aboriginals of this land to all of those who came to this land. And I'm going to tell you, as far as African is concerned, check this out. Even Hitler, who commissioned somebody, Dr. Van Sertima brought this to my attention. He commissioned somebody to say that he had proof that the Aryans were a pure blooded people. And the person that he had commissioned had to run for his life because he could not do so honestly. And he wrote to Hitler and told him, sorry, Mr. Hitler, but every person on the planet has black blood. So there's some honesty somewhere, okay? Which only goes to prove you can get white from black, but you can't get black from white. And that went through the whole range of the skin colors, from geography, from being in different places in the world, and the different climates and the different foods and so on and so forth, the differences. But I'm going to still tell you the fierceness and the savagery and the barbarianism and all of these other things that they claim we were, they were. I'm going to tell you again that when they came off those ice lands, when they came off that ice, okay. Now this, what does this have to do with Black history? I'm going to tell you, they came to the Black lands. Every place they came off that ice, they found paradise. Okay, it's a lot. It's too much to take in 1 month. It's too much to take in 10 years. These people done this research and things like that, and then gets to know and doesn't get worldwide recognition according to us, because it's not that the rest of the world don't know them. America just don't. America doesn't give them their accolades. You understand? They take it and they take that information, they take that knowledge, and they weaponize it against the same people, the same beings who gave it. Because otherwise, we as a whole would be in unity with it. It's not that we would be united against them because of it, but we would be in unity with it. That means that we will progress in such an advanced and speedy with so much speed, you understand, that it would always and continuously overtake them and leave them in the dust, which they consider we are. Nothing but dustlings. You know, they even wrote it into the Bible, son of dust. You know, now now I'm saying that because I say this. I'm saying that to say this. What was that serpent cursed to do? Okay, the original curse. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shall you eat all the days of your life. And then he turned around and called us sons of dust, the son of dust. So what are we? A meal? Okay. Yeah. Um, yeah. To be certain, take those who will tell you both sides of the story and those things that are in between. That if you didn't get the firsthand information, which in some cases you would be the one to bring that information about or bring it out after going in and around all of the restricting of that knowledge, which is to say that there were them that had made discoveries before you that could not state them in their true form. Okay? Because the knowledge would point to people that had passed or that had possessed many attributes, abilities, and skills that those people who discovered them were so amazed that they did not want it to be known of its origin and could not still explain yet, would not give the proper credit to those because of a desire to be superior, and they fall in line under the control of knowledge led by the undermining of invaders, colonizers, or foreign lands. The first line of the first line of descent, and that could be considered descension, or the lowering, okay, of intelligence or any of those other aspects. The first sign of descent was by anthropologists being persuaded by whomever was funding them or who had a particular agenda, okay, had a particular agenda, such as we could say Agenda 2025 by Donald Trump. Ain't his agenda. No, no. That's why he's signing executive orders that were given to him that he must implement and cause to happen. And he's been giving reports to those who gave him those orders as to how much he's getting accomplished and so on and so forth. We get it in the news every day, but we don't realize that that's not meant for us. He's not telling us anything. In particular, he's going by whomever gave him those directives and how well he's carrying out those directives, how he has implemented people and put them in places to do those biddings. Enough said about that. Okay. Um, how the discoveries were presented. This was the way various mindsets and categorical stages, and I would just say allotted information, was given and allowed to be framed by dominant controllers. Okay. This is the way information formed sciences based on the best thinking that could form in the mind pictures with artifacts and implements, which they kept in museums, which they went and stole all over the world and put them in their museums, and then they gave their descriptions of them, the descriptions of the people, the ways those people had, and how they were primitive compared to the upper echelons of money that provided those implements and artifacts that were stolen to the public in museums and told those who would be curators Okay. Okay. You can only give this description of them and that description of them. And that was made to make us look good. Like we were always the ones who performed these articles, made these articles, had the knowledge of them, and so on and so forth. But they as yet cannot begin to explain how the pyramids were built. And tell me, I'm going to quote somebody else. I'm going to not going to say who, but they'll know if they hear me say it. That the greatest knowledge that they have had was at the fall of our knowledge to the time that they enter into it. In other words, 6,000 years ago, we were on our way down, but to them, that was the height of civilization. So you can just imagine everything before that being all of those great, what they call wonders of the world, the 8 wonders of the world, the 12 wonders of the world, how these things were done, and so on and so forth. All of the speculations of it being gods and aliens and people from other planets and so on and so forth. Now, some of those things did occur by other beings being outside of our solar system. I'm not going to say that, but that was way back then when at the time we were yet frequencies and vibrations. Okay, they came in as there was a thing. When I was a young kid, 8, 9, 10 years old, we had the outer limits. Okay. Just think about that. The outer limits. And then things coming in from other realms, things coming in from other solar systems, things come. We had the outer limits to branch our mind out on. And then we also had, check this out, the Twilight Zone. I'm dating myself. I'm 8. I'm 70 years old now. Okay. This was when I was a kid. But I'm gonna tell you something about that. The outer limits meant that however far your mind can reach, you can bring something into this realm and make it something out of your imagination. Okay. The Twilight Zone, what do they call it now? Shadow government, shadow this, shadow that, shadow people, shadow everything. Okay. In the Twilight. They even had the Twilight saga of the werewolves against the vampires and all of that kind of stuff. But nevertheless, also, whatever comes out of your imagination. And then you get imagination, you break it down, images of nations, the images of nations. We were all nations all around the world, all around the planet, so on and so forth. And look at here, until next time, because I'm going to have to give this up. Until next time, when we come back to this, as I said, it's not going to be for a month for me. Never has been. It's always been a learning experience throughout the year, over decades of time. Okay. So I'll see you there. I'll see you next time.